Hi, everybody. So obviously we've had lots and lots of crazy things happen this week. We actually recorded this podcast on Monday of this week on the 9th, and by the 12th, everything had changed. So you'll hear me talk about the Tumbleweeds Film Festival, and that second week got canceled. I mean, everything got canceled. So I just wanted to give that caveat. And so I hope you're all doing okay. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Obscure Animation. This is the podcast that we do once a month where we talk about a underappreciated, underseen animated film, and we have a lot of fun giving it its moment in the sun. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner. My friend Stanford is always so great to come and talk about these films with me.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you. Excited to talk about some obscure animation again this month. And it's definitely obscure.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'd heard about it, but I had never seen it. So it was fun to, we're going back to the very beginning of animated films. This is the second today we're going to talk about Gulliver's Travels from 1939, only the second American-made feature film, animated film.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have fun talking about that a little bit. But before that, I thought I would just sort of recap sort of some of the things that have been happening. One of the cool things that happened in this last month that people should check out over at rotoscopers.com, I published my article on women in animation. And I'm really excited about it because I had originally had actually sold it as a pitch to a website, and they were interested in it, and I worked really hard on it, like, because they wanted it to be a research-based, not just an opinion piece, but a research-based piece. So I worked really hard on it, and it starts out with Retta Scott and Mary Blair and the Ink and Paint women, and goes all the way through to some of these people today, like Dom He and Jennifer Yu Nelson, and some of these figures of women in animation that are changing things. And I was really, really, really proud of it. And I finished it and turned it in to people. And I really felt like I had given them what they'd asked for, what they had bought. And they, for whatever reason, didn't like it. And so they rejected it. And what was really cool is I went ahead with their permission. I put it on Rotoscopers, and we got a little bit of response, but at first, and then all of a sudden, right around International Women's Day, somehow people found it, and it started getting shared by all these different organizations and all these different websites, and you know Agnes Varda?
Yes. Oh yeah.
So her Twitter handle, she's passed away, but I think it's Agnes Films, I think is what it is, something like that. Anyway, they tweeted it out, my article, and it
cool.
Just kind of grew legs.
Congrats,
and
Rach.
Yeah, so that made me feel so good because I felt so proud of it, and I think it just shows that that it's just gotta keep going.
Yes.
And you can't let that your work, if you keep working hard, will find its audience. And I was really, really proud of it. It's called From Mary Blair to Now: The Impact of Women in Animation.
How cool.
Mm-hmm. And
kudos.
We talk about Jennifer Lee. We talked about Signe Boname, who we talked about on this podcast, with Rocks in My Pockets, and a lot of really cool quotes and different things. The Dami, she said, so I think a lot of studios, especially Pixar and Disney, they recently come to realize and to value drawing from different sources of storytellers. They know that by utilizing their super talented, super diverse employees and filmmakers, that they're going to be keeping themselves ahead of the game and continuing to tell unique stories that will set themselves apart from other studios. And then Jennifer U. Nelson, she says, I've been asked about the glass scene a lot of times, and I don't think of myself as some kind of crusader going around smashing glass. I don't feel like I had to, and that is very, very strong. That's a very, very strong flag showing the people around me made it so I didn't have to. Everyone I've worked with were the ones holding me up saying, you go, girl. And that she's the one who did the last 2 Kung Fu Panda movies.
Oh, yeah, right.
She directed them. So I thought that was really cool. And anyway, so I'll put a link down in the description. People can check that out. We had Nora Twoney, who did The Breadwinner. It's nominated. I had a quote from her. And anyway, I'm just really proud of it. And so people should check it out if you haven't had a chance.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so great, Rach. Yeah. Congrats again. That's Thanks. Really cool.
And then we also had here in Utah, we had the Tumbleweeds Film Festival, which is, as of this recording, was this last weekend, and then coming up again to next weekend. It'll probably be done by the time this posts. But this is the first year that they had done it 2 weekends in a row, which is really cool. And it's a really neat film festival just for families and for children. And they have not only animated films, but they have quite a few animated films, shorts, and feature films. In fact, they had The Prince's Voyage as the premiere, which is directed by the same person who directed Louise by the Shore.
Louise by the Shore, yeah.
Which we covered on this
show. Which we reviewed, yeah.
Yeah. I do not think it's as strong as Louise by the Shore, but I'm also not the biggest fan, not as much a fantasy person as. But it was a little dry, but still just so beautiful. And it's really cool. They have, they set the kids up with a little translator devices, so that they can watch the movies without having to worry about the subtitles. And
what a good idea.
Yeah.
For a kid-centric audience.
Yeah. And so then, and even some adults, that find that harder with the subtitles, they're able to get introduced to all these different films. And then they have workshops on all different kinds of stuff. They had workshops on makeup and workshops on special effects, and the kids can take in schools and field trips. And it's all done by the Utah Film Center, who's it's such an amazing organization. And then you go down there and they have all these fun booths and crafts and it's just so cool. I don't think that there are that many cities our size that offer that kind of cultural entertainment for families.
I think it's really so impressive. Special. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you could go and then you could report on it, and then what a strong advocate you are for it too. I think that's really, really great.
Well, we're so lucky to be able to to be able to live here and be able to have the kind of, we just take it for granted that there's people who live in much larger cities than we have that don't have things like the Salt Lake Film Society, that we get pretty much all the independent films, they come here. Yeah. We have excuse me, we have tons of local theater and arts and we're in this weird little random kind of mecca of animation love. And BYU has tons of graduates who are in animation, and so it's an interesting place to live. And it just I think we are very lucky to have the Utah Film Center and all of the screens. Every week they have 2 to 3 free screenings that you can go to, and particularly Tumbleweeds Film Festival, where it's going to be all, for the family. And they have the age on the thing that, so whether it's appropriate. And some of them are free screenings and some of them you pay for, but it's anyway, it's really cool. I got to interview Patrick Hubley. I got to interview Patrick Hubley for Rotoscopers, who is the founder of the Tumbleweeds Film Festival. And that was really interesting to get to talk
nice. To him. I bet that was interesting to get a perspective on And how many years has it been running, Rachel? Isn't this
9 years.
say it's been going for almost a decade, right? And I mean, that's really, really cool. And this year they've expanded it to 2 weekends, right?
2 weekends, yeah. And they did.
So cool.
I put for Family Movie Night, I reviewed Morona's Fantastic Tale, and they're showing that at the festival, and in addition to The Prince Voyage. And Morona's Fantastic Tale is a movie is an obscure animation from last year, an indie that is so cute about this little dog, and it's and his various masters, over the years, and really, really, really cute, or her masters, I should say. So anyway, they're doing some great things, and it's definitely worth checking out around where you live and finding the film festivals and the arts and the activities that are right by you. You don't have to go, because a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I could go to Sundance. I wish I could go to TIFF. But you don't have to. There's a lot of stuff usually pretty close that people can support and that have good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
very true.
Excuse me. All right. Well, after all of that, I didn't feel like I had a ton to say about Gulliver's Travels, so we thought we'd cover a few other little things going on. But yeah, Gulliver's Travels, it came out in 1939, and evidently Walt Disney was famous for saying that his second tier animators could have produced that in their sleep. So he wasn't kind to Gulliver's Travels.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that the producer of this film, Max Fleischer, I don't think he and Walt were really best friends. I read an anecdote, Rachel, that was saying that. So Max Fleischer's son, I believe his name is Richard, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong about that. I can double check, but his son was a live action director, and he actually directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in the 1950s for the Walt Disney Studios. And Max Fleischer came over at some point, and I think Walt Disney had him over. They had, a meal. And I don't know if I don't think it was necessary for the premiere, but it was like came over and like watched some of the production or something going on. And I think that every time Max Fleischer had an interaction with Walt Disney, he used to refer to him as that son of a bee.
Right.
So, excuse my French. But I don't think that but I think really it's because they were competitors.
Sure.
They were making films at the same time. And doing a lot of innovative stuff. Max Fleischer, speaking of, of the rotoscopers, Scythe, right for it, he actually invented the rotoscope.
Yeah.
And he created the first commercially produced he's the one who got the patent for it. And I believe I think it was 1917 when the patent was granted to him for it.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about the rotoscoping, but I think the part of the problem with this movie is I don't know if I really like Gulliver's Travels as a story at all.
Well, it's unrecognizable. I mean, part of it too. Clearly they use the premise of a man crash landing in a ship, getting washed ashore from a shipwreck, and with the Lilliputians,
Yeah.
I read true confessions here. The last time I read Gulliver's Travels was in college.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read it. I feel like I don't think I ever read the whole thing, but I think I read parts of it, kind of like Canterbury's Tales. I don't think I ever read all of Canterbury's Tales, but I read parts of it for like literature classes.
Exactly.
I remember thinking it was very boring.
Well, it's it's a social satire of that time period, and they turned it into this almost unrecognizable. I mean, Disney and many other people are guilty of doing this stuff to literary works. But I'm with you. It's like, what's so appealing about this? And there was drama between the two countries in the book, so I had to go and at least read a summary of the book, and because as I recall, the book has 4 sections. There's like 4 main places that Gulliver goes on his travels.
Mm-hmm.
This really just focuses on the very first one.
Yeah.
So it's just like the first fourth of the book, and the stuff. Even though these are warring nations, but there's not like this love story with the kind of the all a Sleeping Beauty as we would know it. As far as an animated story goes, between the prince from one kingdom and the princess from another.
Yeah.
And then of kingdoms that are in conflict.
Really, almost the whole movie is them just trying to set him free and trying to deal with him. Like it's most of it is trying to find a way to lift him.
Yeah.
For a good hunk of the movie.
Well, absolutely. Well, and then it seems like the first, I mean, they kind of set up the conflict between the 2 kings, of these warring kingdoms, but doesn't it take like 20 minutes for the little Lilliputian who discovers him to tell the king that, by the way, there's a giant that's on the beach?
When they're finally getting to the point where they're lifting him, I looked and it was almost the 50-minute mark.
I know.
Just when they're lifting him.
And isn't it like an hour and 20 minutes or something, an hour and 15 minutes?
I know. It's almost the whole movie. It's just like them lifting him. And and this little romance kind of going on. And it felt to me like something more from the 70s than it did from the 30s to me.
Oh, interesting.
I felt like it seemed like something Ralph Bakshi would have made.
Okay.
just in animation, not in tone and theme, but because he used so much rotoscoping, Ralph Bakshi.
Yes.
And just the I don't know, I felt like it had sort of a little bit of his style, a little bit to me.
I think that's a really good point. No, I understand that. I didn't think that initially watching, but hearing you say that, like, oh yeah. Gulliver, I think his character is all rotoscoped. At least just the way he moves. The Lilliputians in the other kingdom, they all look super cartoony. And maybe there was some rotoscope used, but then also it's interesting because all of them look super cartoony, and they almost look, they kind of look like, to me they remind me like a set of the 7 Dwarfs. As far as
what I thought of Betty Boop.
Yeah, because
very
Max Fleischer
circular
is the creator. His studio is the creator of Betty Boop.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, because the faces are so circular.
Yes,
so circular, and you got the really big circle cheeks, and like they all look. I thought they are actually kind of cute. They're cute. People.
Yeah, I think they're cute. It's just super cartoony. They're almost look like a similar style that you'd see in some silly symphonies at Disney.
Yeah, but it does not fit in with the Gulliver at all. It looks so weird.
It's so in contrast and so out of place.
Yeah.
The Fleischer Studios also, they created Popeye cartoons from the period.
Well, they were saying on Wikipedia that originally this was going to be Popeye's Travels.
Right.
And so then it got changed and
then it got
morphed.
Yeah. And this is, I think to be mentioned too, is from Paramount Pictures. And this is all totally in response to the success of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs.
Sure, yeah, which was 1937.
Yeah, so this is all trying to, replicate the success of that film. And yeah, please, after you.
No, the one thing that I like better, is I like the style of the singing. I'm not saying the songs are better, but you don't have that squeaky singing.
You don't have the squeaky singing of Snow White.
It's more traditional, like choral.
Yeah,
singing.
Yeah, and the two romantic leads, which again, those were probably rotoscoped too. But it was interesting because those characters, they look so out of place because they're so perfectly proportioned.
Yeah.
And they've got the kind of the classic looking faces, and then everybody else around them is the the highly stylized Betty Boop 7 Dwarf, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Which again, I know that they're the romantic leads, but still, that was to me, it just almost seemed weird because, I mean, you look at them and I just think, okay, are they small? I mean, initially I was thinking, okay, are they? Oh yeah, they are small because they're, if they're from this place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you see them in conjunction with Gulliver.
Well, it is even the king. I feel like has a very different. The kings have a very different animated style than the princess and the prince.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's also kind of awkward because they're like this arranged marriage, and but I don't know. So that makes it a little bit awkward for now. And but yeah, the songs there's 6 songs.
Yes.
That's All's Well, and then Faithful Forever. It's a happy day. Bluebirds in the Moonlight. And I Hear a Dream, and We're All Together Now. And I think they're all fine songs. And yeah, I did like the arrangement.
They're fine. They just seem like they're very much songs of the time period too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm with you. They're fine. They're kind of forgettable, but they're fine. Yeah.
I just prefer it over that squeaky singing of Snow White.
Snow White.
Even though I think those songs are better, but I just prefer.
Yeah.
There's that they do the wedding feast is where they have bluebirds in the moonlight, and that was kind of a nice sequence. There were some nice moments of lighting, I thought.
Oh yeah, me too.
Gulliver.
Yeah. They did some interesting stuff with the lighting. That's probably the stuff that I liked most about the animation. I think in a lot of ways they were trying to mimic Snow White, as I frankly felt, just given the look of that of the Lilliputians' kingdom and kind of like the design of the castle and but mostly just like in backgrounds.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. The lighting. There's like one scene in particular that it seems like Gulliver is it sunset or something, but it kind of got in bed. And they do interesting stuff with the color of his clothing too. I thought that was really striking.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminded me of like a bad Don Bluth film. Like just kind of like trying to get that, but it all kind of comes off as kind of like the bad Don Bluth, not the good Don Bluths, but like it's trying to get that Disney cuteness, but instead it ends up feeling just kind of like, oh.
Well, yeah, because really, really weird. I think the story is so problematic. I mean, as we said, early on, the story is so problematic that they've created for it, and it's one of those things like it just it could work for animation in that it's pretty fanciful that this man lands in a place with miniature people, right? And that's kind of a fun concept. But wow, the story they created was so interesting, and so the pacing of it, like just nothing was happening, or it was happening at such a deliberate pace, but so deliberate that I just like trying to stay awake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Don Bluth, he would put in some like slightly garish comic relief, probably Dom DeLuise. And they don't even have that here. They don't have. They don't have really any comic relief. And
they have that one. They have that one character who is like the one who discovers Gulliver in the first place, and I'm Gabby. Gabby, who is, and then they have those 3 spies from the other kingdom, and then there's like that bird that gets sent, like the pigeon or whatever, they get sent with the message. But none of them, I didn't think any of them were funny. I mean, I know that they were trying to be, but I don't think I laughed.
No, I mean, I
don't mean to be so critical, Rachel, but
I remember enjoying a little bit the Bluebirds in the Moonlight is a silly idea. That song and that sequence was a little bit silly, a little bit fun, but yeah, there wasn't a character that I was like, okay, that's the comic relief kind of character.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And it, I don't know. I mean, there's just, I guess, I mean, maybe I'm making it sound like I hated it more than I did. Cause I wouldn't say I hated it, but it was just kind of like not very good.
Well, it's not a good. It's really not a good film. Again, I think it's historically significant in that, as you mentioned, that it's the second full-length animated feature created in America.
Right.
But
and I think it's interesting just in just to see in comparison to what Disney was able to do. I mean, it's just such a contrast, night and day.
Well, it is. And, you look at the artistry of what they were doing at Disney. I mean, just the high level of it, the multi-plane camera, I think also, makes a big difference in the depth of field for so many of the shots. And as you mentioned, some of the lighting was unique, but overall, I didn't think that there was really anything remarkable about the film.
I mean, can you imagine Walt going to see this and being like, yeah, we got Pinocchio coming out.
We got this.
We're fine. We got this.
I mean, you're right. I mean, Pinocchio comes out the next year, and holy smokes. I mean, there's like no comparison.
No comparison. I mean, just the absolute beauty of the animation in Pinocchio, some of the best ever. And
I mean, it still hasn't been matched, in some of the stuff that was done, they did in Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were probably like putting their feet up. Like, we're gonna be okay. But I don't know. It's just it's an interesting little thing from history. But I think part of the problem is I don't know. I don't think I'm that big a fan of Gulliver's Travels. Just the story. I don't know.
Well, as I said, it's I mean, not necessarily I mean, conceptually maybe, but not necessarily a good story, and not really true to the source material at all, other than,
the only other version I've seen is the one with Jack Black, and that was horrible too.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's really just not the most cinematic of stories, because it's the same way with things like Beowulf and the Iliad and Odyssey. Like, those are classic stories, but they're really not that cinematic, because they're kind of, you just take like one stop on the adventure, as opposed to having like a clear sort of plot of here's what we're doing, kind of a thing.
Well, right. And, I don't mean to be repetitive, but when I studied Gulliver's Travels, in college, I just distinctly remember, I mean, our professor turned those lectures into a kind of a British history lesson, where we were learning about some different things that were happening at the time, and why this was a significant piece, because Jonathan Swift was satirizing, a lot of the societal and challenges happening in the day, and how do you turn that into a family animated film? I don't think you do. And however they modified the story, I didn't think it was successful.
There really is no story. I mean, I guess you have a little bit of, like, it's literally lifting this giant up.
Well, they lift the giant up, and then this other kingdom wants to,
there's this arranged marriage.
The arranged marriage fell apart, and so now they're going to go to war. And I think that other kingdom wanted to take over, and then Gulliver brings him, help with the help of the prince and the princess, brings everybody together, and so there's a happy ending. And then they build him a boat, right? Spoiler alert, and he sails off to his next adventure. But thankfully, we didn't have to go along.
It's interesting because there is some of this in this movie, The Prince's Voyage, that I just saw, that because it's also about it's not giant, but it's a foreigner, I guess, that washes aside this land, and all the people are very they are very skeptical of him, and kind of they have this whole inquisition about him, and then they end up in this whole kingdom of the monkeys that is in the tops of the trees. And anyway, there's some things, but yeah, I mean, it's just, the problem is you just have to get enough plot into these kind of stories so that it's, that it's interesting, as opposed to just kind of saying something. I mean, even with Wizard of Oz, they had to change things around quite a bit in order to make it cinematic so that it could work as opposed to just being this, sort of allegory and it's sort of adventures in Oz, that you had to kind of work it around to give it a, clear focus of Dorothy and, getting back home and everything like that. And so, which came out the same year as this. 1939 is known as one of the best years in history of cinema.
Yeah, yep.
Because of, Wizard of Oz for one of them.
Gone with the Wind.
Yep. Wuthering Heights came out the year. So I'm glad that I saw it. It's interesting, but yeah, it wasn't the best.
No, it's not. Like I said, historically interesting and not that great of a film. Now, one other, I just think an interesting side note is, this film, it's now in the public domain. I initially when we were chatting about this, trying to plan for this episode, I personally never want to watch a pirated copy of anything. I mean, right. I really try to be sensitive about that. But you can buy a Blu-ray of this. They're in 2014. Thunderbeam Animation released a restored version of the film, along with several other of the Fleischer Studio shorts. I don't know what shorts are on there, but so there is a DVD, but that I just watched it on YouTube. There's like multiple versions of it on YouTube, and it was fine, and I didn't feel like, again, because it's a movie that's in the public domain, so still labeled as a Paramount Pictures release, but I don't know how any of that stuff worked when Fleischer and Paramount parted ways. And the Fleischer Studios made some Superman shorts in the early 40s, and I know I've seen some of them, and I think that the style of it was very influential to what Bruce Timm did for the Batman, the animated series.
Oh.
And so those are some that I want to check out again. I thought, that would be interesting. I should do a little more homework and to see some of those Superman shorts, because I know I've seen some of those at some point, and thought that they, at least stylistically, were really interesting to look at. I don't know if the stories are any good.
Yeah, that'd be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Especially in the 40s, and you think of the some of the themes and stuff like that. I'd be curious, because that's pretty early for Superman, isn't it?
Yes.
It was right when it first started.
I think it was the first animated retelling of telling of Superman stories.
Interesting. Yeah, so there we go. That's Gulliver's Travels. So if any of you have seen it, let us know what you think of Gulliver's Travels, and if you maybe think we're being a little hard on it, let us know in the comment section or on Twitter, and we'd be very curious for your thoughts. And so let us know if you have any suggestions of what we should do for obscure animation coming up. We have some fun ideas, and we look forward to doing that. It's something I really do look forward to every month, talking about what I think are sort of obscure, underappreciated films, and getting a chance to talk to Stanford about it. I just think it's so much fun. And,
well, I have a great time too, Rachel, and thanks for always introducing me to interesting movies. Really that's what I love, is just being able to expand my horizons and see something different. So thank you.
So where can people find you and your content online?
All right, I'm on Twitter at Stanford Clark, and I have a blog and podcast at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. If you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. And if you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and give us your thumbs up. We really appreciate that so much. We also have our patron group, which is really fun. And it just helps us so much. The more patrons, the more fun stuff we can do. And then we also have our merch store, which has Animation Junkie shirts. So make sure, and designs. So make sure to check that out. And so thanks so much, Stanford. I really appreciate it. And we will talk again next month.
Thanks, Rachel. See ya.
Bye, everyone.